You know, in everyday life, sometimes we catch ourselves wondering, where the hell did all the money go? Right? Your wallet feels empty. The job market's looking bleak. Businesses are shutting down left and right. But does money actually just vanish? Or is it sitting somewhere quiet, just waiting to wake up and start moving again? The truth is, money flow in the economy is a lot like blood in your body. When it's circulating freely, it keeps every part alive and thriving. But when it gets blocked, the whole system starts to shut down. This isn't just about consumers or investors, it's the heartbeat of the entire macroeconomy. And here in the US, where real estate isn't just a place to live, but one of the biggest ways people park their money and build wealth, money flow shows its power even more clearly. When the housing market's booming, it's like the economy's getting a shot of pure oxygen. But when it freezes up, everything grinds to a halt, and the ripple effects hit every corner of life. So, where exactly is the money hiding right now? How does this whole money flow thing really work? And why can something as immobile as real estate end up controlling the pulse of the entire economy? Stick with me, because what we're about to uncover might just change how you see everything. Welcome to the channel, where uncomfortable truths are quietly examined. You know, one of the most mind-blowing things about money is that it doesn't just sit there, it moves. And when it moves fast enough, it can create way more wealth than you might think. Think about it like this. Money in the economy is a lot like blood flowing through your veins. When it's circulating quickly, it nourishes everything. Jobs, businesses, growth. But here's the magic part. The same dollar can get spent over and over again, creating multiple dollars of economic value along the way. Economists call this the velocity of money. It's basically how many times a single dollar changes hands in a year. And that velocity? It multiplies the impact of the total money supply on GDP. Right now, in the US, the velocity of M2, that broader measure of money, is hovering around 1.4 times per quarter. That means, on average, each dollar gets used about 1.4 times in 3 months. To buy goods and services, back in the late 1990s, it was over 2. Money was flying around. But during tough times like the pandemic low, it dropped below 1.2. The point is, $2 even with a money supply of over $22 trillion. If velocity is low, growth feels sluggish. But when it picks up, boom, the economy surges. Let me give you a simple, real-life example. Suppose you spend $100 on a new pair of sneakers from a local store. That $100 goes to the store owner. They use it to pay part of their employee's salary. The employee then spends that money on groceries. The grocery store pays their supplier, and so on. In a healthy economy, that original $100 could ripple through and contribute to hundreds of dollars in total activity over the course of a year. It's not duplication. It's creation of real value at every step. Wages paid, products made, services delivered, all adding up to GDP. The small lesson here, your everyday spending isn't just consumption. It's fuel for the economic engine. When we all keep money moving, instead of hoarding it out of fear, we help keep the whole system alive and growing. Pretty powerful, right? But to really see this in action, let's follow a bigger amount through the American economy. Like a typical home mortgage. That's coming up next. You know, to really bring this magic to life, let's follow a real American story. Imagine a typical family, let's call them the Johnsons, deciding to buy their first home in a suburb outside Chicago. The house costs around $400,000. which is pretty close to the national median these days. They put down $60,000, that's about 15%, right in line with what many buyers are doing right now. And they take out a $340,000 mortgage from their bank. We'll keep the numbers round for simplicity, but this mirrors a real scenario. Here's where it gets fascinating. The bank doesn't pull that $340,000 out of some dusty vault. They create it digitally right there in the Johnson's account. Suddenly, the seller, a home builder, has $340,000 more to work with. They use it to pay contractors for finishing other homes. Those contractors pay their crews, electricians, plumbers, carpenters, who then take their wages and spend on groceries, car repairs, or a family vacation. The grocery store orders more stock from suppliers. The auto shop buys parts. The hotel pays staff, and on it goes. That original $340,000 ripples out, getting spent again and again. It funds materials like lumber and steel. It covers permits and local taxes. It boosts sales at furniture stores when the Johnsons furnish their new place. In a strong economy, that single mortgage could easily multiply, contributing to several times its value in total GDP as it circulates through jobs, services, and consumption. Think about the 2000s housing boom. Millions of mortgages like this fueled massive growth. Construction jobs exploded. Retail surged. Even tech benefited from wealth effects. None, but flip it. During the 2008 crash, when mortgages dried up and people stopped spending, that circulation slowed dramatically. The whole chain suffered. The small lesson here? Buying a home isn't just a personal milestone. It's injecting fuel into the economic bloodstream. Your mortgage doesn't disappear. It transforms, creating real value for countless others along the way. But this story also has two sides. What we see personally versus the bigger system. Why does your wallet feel the pinch, while the overall economy keeps chugging? That's what we'll unpack next. You know, here's something that trips a lot of us up. We feel the pinch in our own wallets. Groceries costing more, gas prices fluctuating, maybe skipping that extra coffee run. And it seems like money is just evaporated. But zoom out to the big picture, the entire US economy, and things look different. The system as a whole might still be growing, jobs getting added, companies reporting profits. So why this disconnect? It's the difference between the micro view, your personal money flow, and the macro view, the vast interconnected economic machine. On the micro level, you're dealing with your paycheck, bills, savings or lack thereof. When inflation bites or uncertainty hits, you pull back, hold on to cash, delay big purchases. That feels like money disappearing from your life. But macro, that same dollar you didn't spend might be sitting in your bank, which lends it out to someone else. A business expanding, another family buying a car, or it's in the stock market, fueling company growth. The total money supply over $21 trillion in M2 right now doesn't vanish. It just slows down or shifts paths. A classic real-life example. During the early pandemic years, many Americans stockpiled cash. Savings rates skyrocketed. Velocity of money, the speed it circulates, plummeted to historic lows. Personally, it felt scary. Money gone into savings accounts. But from the macro side, that cash helped stabilize banks. And when stimulus hit, it flooded back out, powering one of the fastest recoveries on record. Retail boomed. Stocks soared. Your caution on micro became fuel for macro growth later. The small lesson here: don't confuse your personal snapshot with the whole economy's movie. It's easy to feel broke while the system hums along, or vice versa. Understanding both views helps you make smarter decisions, like not panicking and hoarding forever. But speaking of how money actually enters the system in the first place, as most people are shocked to learn it's not just printed and handed out. Banks play a surprising role, creating money out of thin air, legally. Let's dive into that truth next. This is where a lot of people get that "wait, what?" moment. Because most of us assume banks work like a giant safe. You deposit money, they lock it away, and only lend out what's already there. But the truth? Banks create new money every time they issue a loan. It's shocking at first, but it's the surprising engine behind modern credit. Here's how it really works in the US. When the Johnsons from our earlier example get approved for that $340,000 mortgage, the bank doesn't transfer cash from another customer's account or dip into a vault full of bills. Instead, they simply credit the Johnsons' account with $340,000 new digital money, created right then and there. This is called fractional reserve banking, though these days, the fraction part is a bit of a legacy term. Back in the day, banks had to hold a percentage like 10% of deposits as reserves, but since 2020, the Fed has set the required reserve ratio to 0% for most accounts. Banks still hold plenty of reserves for safety and liquidity. But the key is, lending creates money. That new $340,000 enters the economy, gets spent on the house, ripples through contractors, suppliers, and beyond. Just like we talked about, and the broader money supply M2, which includes checking, savings, and more, sits around $22 trillion these days. A huge chunk of that, born from loans like this, real-world proof. During the housing boom of the mid-2000s, easy credit creation fueled massive money growth, until it overheated and crashed in 2008. On the flip side, when banks tightened lending post-crisis, money creation slowed, and recovery dragged. The small lesson here? Credit isn't just moving existing money around. It's expanding the total supply, powering growth when done right, but risky if overdone. Understanding this demystifies why loans feel abundant one year and scarce the next. But sometimes, governments step in deliberately to pump up that money creation. Like with those massive stimulus packages during tough times. We'll look at how that played out in the US next. Sometimes governments have to step in big time to kickstart that money creation we just talked about. And there's no better real-world example than what happened here in the US during the COVID crisis. When the pandemic hit, lockdowns shut down huge parts of the economy overnight. People lost jobs, businesses closed, and money velocity, the speed it circulates, plummeted to historic lows, dipping below 1.1 for the first time ever. It felt like the bloodstream was freezing up. To prevent a total collapse, the government rolled out massive relief packages, totaling around $5 trillion across several rounds. The biggest one? The American Rescue Plan in early 2021, a $1.9 trillion shot in the arm. That included direct checks, up to $400 per adult, plus more for kids. Millions of families got that money straight into their accounts. And what happened next was dramatic. People started spending on everything from TVs and furniture to home improvements and cars. Retail sales spiked, record jumps month after month. The stock market roared back, with companies like Apple, Amazon, and Tesla posting huge gains as consumer demand surged. GDP bounced back faster than almost anyone predicted. One of the quickest recoveries on record. That stimulus didn't just create money through banks. It flooded the system directly, got velocity moving again, and multiplied value as dollars changed hands rapidly. But it wasn't perfect. Some of that spending fueled bottlenecks and price pressures later. The small lesson here: government stimulus can be a powerful tool to unclog the economic arteries when private spending freezes out of fear. Done right, it revives circulation and growth. But timing and scale matter. Too much, too late, and you risk overheating. Of course. The flip side is just as scary. What happens when fear wins and everyone stops spending altogether? That's the real danger zone, known as a liquidity trap. We'll explore that next. You know, this is the scary flip side of everything we've been talking about. When the money flow we've described suddenly stops or slows to a crawl, it's called a liquidity trap. A situation where people and businesses hoard cash out of fear. Interest rates are already near zero, and even massive stimulus struggles to get things moving again. The circulation we rely on, it grinds to a halt. Like blood clotting in the arteries, the whole economic body starts to suffer. Jobs vanish, businesses close, growth flatlines, and the worst part? It can feel like there's plenty of money out there. Trillions in the system, but it's just stuck. A prime American example is the aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis. After the housing bubble burst, fear gripped everyone. Banks stopped lending freely. Consumers pulled back hard, cutting spending, paying down debt, hoarding cash. Velocity of money plunged, staying low for years, even with the Fed slashing rates to zero and pumping trillions through quantitative easing. Recovery was painfully slow. Unemployment lingered high. Home values stayed depressed, and it took nearly a decade to feel normal again. More recently, we've seen echoes in parts of the market, like the repo market volatility and reserve tightness that popped up in late 2025. Rates hovering in the mid 3% range, yet whispers of blockages as banks get cautious, and some sectors slow spending amid uncertainty. The small lesson here? Fear is the real killer of money flow. When we all tighten our belts at once, out of worry about jobs, prices, or the future, we unintentionally make the problem worse for everyone. A little prudence is smart, but collective hoarding? It starves the economic engine we all depend on. But fear doesn't win forever. Often, what breaks the trap is something deeper. Confidence. The belief that tomorrow will be better. That spending today will pay off. That's the true spark that gets money moving again. Let's explore why confidence is everything next. You know, when things get shaky, markets tumbling, jobs uncertain, geopolitical tensions rising, money doesn't just sit still. It runs. It flees to places that feel safe. This is called a flight to safety, and it's one of the most powerful forces in tough economic times. Instead of chasing risky stocks or big spending, people and institutions pull cash out of volatile assets and park it in havens that hold value, or even gain, when everything else feels like it's crumbling. In America, classic safe spots include gold, U.S. Treasury bonds, especially longer-term ones, and cash-like holdings. More recently, some folks have turned to Bitcoin as a digital gold, a dramatic real-life example. Look at recent months, with uncertainty swirling around interest rates, inflation lingering, and global risks. Gold prices have surged to record highs, topping $4,500 an ounce in late 2025, up over 70% for the year. Investors piled in, seeing it as the ultimate hedge. Meanwhile, U.S. Treasury bonds saw strong demand, pushing yields down at times, as people sought the unbreakable backing of the government. Even with 10-year yields hovering around 4.2% lately, longer-term bonds became go-to spots for preservation. Bitcoin. It had its moments as a perceived safe haven earlier, but in true stress tests, it often moves with risk assets, dipping when stocks do. The small lesson here? Money hiding doesn't mean it's gone. It's just changing form, protecting itself until conditions feel safer. Smart investors recognize these shifts and diversify across havens, not putting all eggs in one basket. Because when fear eases, that parked money flows back out, often sparking the next boom. But what really breaks these hiding spells? It's not just policy or events. It's something deeper. Confidence. The belief that spending and investing today will pay off tomorrow. That's the true engine that gets the whole flow roaring again. We'll dive into why confidence is everything next. You know, if we've learned one thing from all this, it's that confidence is the real heartbeat of money flow, not the total amount of dollars out there. We've got over 22 trillion in M2 circulating. Not even low interest rates or big stimulus checks. It's the shared belief that spending today, investing today, borrowing today, will lead to a better tomorrow. When confidence is high, people spend freely, businesses hire and expand, banks lend eagerly. And that velocity we talked about, it picks up, multiplies value, keeps the economic blood pumping strong. But when it cracks, everything freezes, even with trillions available. A perfect real-life gauge is the University of Michigan Consumer Sentiment Index. Back in the boom years, it often hovered above 90 or even 100. People felt optimistic. Spending surged. Post-2008 crash, it plunged into the 50s and 60s for years, mirroring slow recovery and hoarding. More recently, in late 2025, it's been stuck around the low 50s, one of the lowest stretches in decades, reflecting worries over prices, jobs, and uncertainty. And look what happens. Velocity stays sluggish. Growth feels uneven. Money hides in safe spots like treasuries or gold. The small lesson here? Confidence isn't fluffy psychology. It's the invisible engine. As individuals, we can nurture it, focus on long-term plans, diversify wisely, avoid panic selling or endless hoarding. Because when enough of us believe in forward motion, the whole flow restarts. And nowhere is this more dramatic in America than with real estate, our biggest wealth builder and money magnet. How it booms the economy or freezes it solid, and what practical steps we can take forward. That's our final deep dive next. You know, to tie everything together, real estate in America acts like a massive dam controlling money flow. It doesn't just provide homes. It shapes how trillions circulate through the economy. For most middle-class families, home equity forms the biggest chunk of wealth, often around 25–30% of total net worth in recent years. The median home price hovers around $410,000 lately. And when prices rise steadily, it creates a powerful wealth effect. People feel richer, spend more on renovations, cars, vacations. Velocity picks up. Businesses thrive. Jobs multiply. During booms like the post-pandemic surge, housing pulled money in like a magnet, fueling construction, furniture sales, local taxes, even stock investments from home equity loans. But when it freezes, like we've seen in recent years, with 30-year mortgage rates around 6%, affordability strains, many lock in low rates from years ago and stay put. Inventory stays low, sales slow, prices grow sluggishly or even dip in some markets. The dam holds back the flood. Money hides, Circulation slows, and the ripple effects hit everything from retail to jobs. Look at the 2008 crash. The dam burst. Prices plunged. Wealth evaporated. Spending froze, leading to the Great Recession. Today, with growth cooling to low single digits, and some regions seeing declines, we're in a holding pattern, not crashing, but not booming either. The small lesson here? Real estate amplifies everything. Your personal decisions affect the whole flow. Don't over-leverage in bubbles, but don't sit out forever either. Practical ways forward. Diversify beyond heavy real estate reliance. Build that 401k, emergency fund. Maybe REITs for exposure without the hassle. Shop rates carefully if buying or refinancing. Consider longer-term confidence over short-term fears. And remember, keep your own money moving wisely. So, we've journeyed from that single dollar multiplying value through credit creation, stimulus shocks, blockages, hiding spots, and the power of confidence, all the way to how housing dams it up or lets it rush. The big takeaway? Money doesn't vanish. It flows, multiplies, or hides, based on how we all act together. Understanding this gives you real power to navigate tough times, build wealth steadily, and even help the bigger economy thrive. If this opened your eyes at all, hit that like button, share it with someone wondering where the money went, and subscribe for more no BS breakdowns like this. Drop a comment. What's your biggest money flow worry right now? I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for sticking with me.